So happy Mother's Day to everyone. And this is to all the mothers out there, to everyone who has ever nurtured anyone, and to all who have had a mother or someone such like a mother to love them. Today we honor all of you. And today my talk title is Beatitudes, Part 1. On page 53 of the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes wrote, "Our thoughts should tend more and more towards an affirmative attitude of mind that is positive, stable, and above all else, toward a real unity with spirit that is already complete and perfect." And during the month of May, we're focusing our attitude and whether it is toward a real unity with spirit, which always lifts us up. And specifically this morning, we're going to look at the attitudes of being that were taught by that great Jewish religious scientist about 2,000 years ago. One of his most famous teachings is found in what is known as the Sermon on the Mount, and it opens with the 8 Beatitudes. Even people who don't know much about the Judeo-Christian background or the scripture are really pretty much aware of the Beatitudes. And the question, though, is whether they truly understood them. And, you know, the other part of that is whether they, even if they understood the Beatitudes, did they look upon them as something that had a real application to their everyday life? Oliver Wendell Holmes once said, "Most people are willing to take the Sermon on the Mount as a flag to sail under, but few will use it as a rudder to which to steer." This morning we're going to dig underneath the words to find that rudder. Emmett Fox, has anyone heard of Emmett Fox? Mm-hmm. Okay, he wrote the Sermon on the Mount, Keys for Successful Living, and he suggests that the Beatitudes are a general summary of the whole Christian teaching. That's saying quite a lot. And they are all about our mental states, our attitudes. For the master teacher Jesus knew that if our mental states are right, which means aligned, everything else must be right too. And if these are wrong, then nothing else can be right. So today we're going to look at the teachings of Jesus that have come to be known as the Beatitudes, or as I like to think of them, the attitudes of being. There are 8 Beatitudes, 8 attitudes of being. And, you know, it'd be nice to go through all 8 today, but probably some of us have other things to do. So we're only going to do 4 this morning. Next week we'll explore the second set. So here are the first 4. First one, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Number 2, blessed are they that mourn, they shall be comforted. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. But before we delve into these 4, let's look for just a moment at 2 words that began each statement. Blessed are. Blessed are. According to Webster's dictionary, blessed means to invoke divine favor upon. Why, you ask? Because these attitudes make God happy? No, that's not why. Because they align us with universal harmony. They align us with creative flow of life. They align us with the innate goodness of the presence of spirit. And that's why divine favor is called forth. So let's look. Let's look at these four Beatitudes. 1, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Right away in this first Beatitude, we come to a point of needing to realize that terms and expressions and sometimes actual words are used in the Bible in a sense that is distinctly different from the everyday usage or the meaning of the words that we use today. So what does poor in spirit mean? Emmett Fox says to be poor in spirit does not mean the thing that we call poor-spirited nowadays. To be poor in spirit means to have renounced all preconceived opinions in the wholehearted search for God. I think that's very important, to have renounced all preconceived opinions in the wholehearted search for God. It means you're willing to set aside your present habits of thought, your present views and prejudices, your present way of life, if necessary. It means to jettison, in fact, anything and everything that can stand in your way of finding God. So divine favor is invoked upon those who are willing to let go of the old thought patterns, the old assumptions, the old prejudices, in order to find God. These last few words imply that God is lost, and of course, we know that that isn't true. God is never lost, but sometimes we might think so. I think when there's a time when we feel that God is lost, it's not that God has gone anywhere, it's that we're the ones who have moved away. But there is this story about a couple who had two little boys. They were age 8 and 10, and they were excessively mischievous. Could actually be my granddaughters. But these two were always getting into trouble, and their parents could be assured that if there was any mischief that occurred in their town, that their two young sons had something to do with it, and they were somehow involved. The parents were at their wits' ends on what to do about their son's behavior. And the mother had heard that there was a clergyman in town who had been successful in disciplining children in the past, so she approached the minister about seeing her sons. The clergyman agreed to speak with the boys, but he asked to see them individually. The 8-year-old went to meet with him first. The clergyman sat down with the boy and asked him sternly, "Where is God?" The little boy made no response. So the clergyman repeated the question in a little bit sterner tone, "Where is God?" Again, the boy made no attempt to answer. So the clergyman raised his voice even more, and he shook his finger at that little boy and he said, "Where is God?" Well, at that point, the little boy jumped up, he bolted from the room, he ran directly home, and he slammed himself into a closet. His older brother followed him into the closet and said, "What happened?" The younger brother replied, "We're in big trouble this time. God is lost, and they think we had something to do with it." So according to Emmett Fox, the first Beatitude is telling us that in order to find God or the kingdom of heaven, or perhaps we may want to rephrase that to say to rediscover God, we may need to let go of some things. Letting go of old ways of thinking, let go of old perceptions of God. In other words, have an open and receptive heart. When we come into this teaching, many of us found that we had to use a word, to dump a bunch of mental and emotional baggage, which we might have brought from some of our former religions. In fact, I've heard it termed that some people consider themselves religious refugees. You know, they're escaping these old beliefs that just don't feel right anymore. And all of us, I think, I can say confidently, found that we need to dump, which is most likely an ongoing process, some negative thoughts and habits and patterns. When we find that something is not working in our lives, we realize that, we've got to do something different. Emmett Fox says the poor in spirit have come to see that their most cherished beliefs may have been and probably were mistaken, and that all their ideas and views of life may be false and in need of recasting. They are ready to start again at the very beginning and learn life anew, and in that process, they are truly blessed. That's where the blessing comes. So the first attitude of being says, divine favor is poured upon those who are willing to let go of the old, limiting beliefs so that they shall know heavenly bliss. Who's ready to do that? I'm ready to do that. Yes. So on to number 2. Blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. On the surface, this says that when we are sad, God shall comfort us. Okay, I get that. But what I never understood was the blessing part. Why would those who mourn be blessed? Remember, being blessed means to have divine favor invoked upon us. So why would those who mourn receive such divine favor? An interesting thing about us humans, we can all make the choice to turn to God at any time in our lives. We can all choose to reap the blessings of an awareness of our connection at any time. But most of us don't turn to God until we're in some kind of trouble, right? Until something is right there in front of us. Most of us don't undertake the search for God wholeheartedly until we're driven there by trouble of some kind. It could be health challenges, relationship challenges, money challenges. We might have suffered a loss. There could be addiction. It goes on and on and on. Something has appeared in our lives to get our attention. And I think that a lot of times those are the true gifts when it appears in your life to bring you back in consciousness. But sometimes we don't seek God or Spirit until we are desperate. Think for a moment what may in the past have caused you to turn to Spirit, to turn to God? My guess is it wasn't because everything was going just hunky-dory in your life. That wasn't the time when you thought, oh, this is great. It's possible that it was because things were looking pretty bleak, and you didn't really know where else to turn. And therein lies the blessing. The darkness, the despair, the sadness, the mourning, to use the word here, brought us to seek the comfort of Spirit or God. And according to Emmett Fox, comfort means experiencing the presence of God, which is the end of all mourning. Because when we know that we're part of something so big, so huge, and eternal, we can release that mourning, we can release that sadness. In this Beatitude, Jesus told us that divine favor is invoked upon those who allow their troubles to take them to a place where they can experience the presence of God. When you experience that, that's where the joy is. Ernest Holmes says, all things work together for good. Even that which we call evil is salutary, leading us to the way, the truth, and the life. Suffering should teach us a lesson which should cause us to refrain from making more mistakes. It carries a blessing with it when we learn how to garner knowledge from the experience. But Holmes also says that, the time for suffering is over. We don't have to suffer to learn. We can recognize the truth and go from there. This attitude of being says that those who allow their troubles to deepen their relationship with this awesome power that is God are blessed. And I think there is a release of ego here as well, when we get our bloated nothingness out of the way. And when we do that, we make room for Spirit, we make room for God, we make room for joy. So, number 3, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth. And according to Fox, this Beatitude is among the half-dozen most important verses in the Bible. When you possess the spirited meaning of this text, you have the secret of dominion, the secret of overcoming every kind of difficulty. It is the Jesus Christ message reduced to a single sentence. And it's a pretty powerful proclamation. But right off the bat, we know that we can't take this one literally. No one is going to inherit the earth. So obviously there must be some deeper meaning behind at least that term in this Beatitude. The word earth in the Bible does not mean soil. We like to think, the earth is the soil. It doesn't mean this planet that we call earth. It really means manifestation. It means material expression, form. In other words, your earth means the whole of your outer experiences, and to inherit the earth means to have the power to bring your conditions of life into harmony and truth. So we see that the Bible talks about the earth, and it's referring to the conditions of our lives from our bodily health outward to the farthest points in our affairs. This text tells us how we may possess or govern to be masters of our own lives and destinies. How then does Jesus suggest that this is done? Well, in a certain way. In a certain way that may seem quite unexpected, and it's through meekness. The fact is, the word meekness also is used in a special and technical sense. Its true significance has nothing to do with the common meaning, the modern meaning that we use now in English, which is showing patience, humility, gentle, easily imposed upon, or submissive. Emmett Fox says the true significance of the word meek in the Bible is a mental attitude for which there is no other single word available. And is this mental attitude which is the secret of prosperity, and it is the combination of open-mindedness, faith in God, and the realization that the will of God for us is always something joyous and interesting and vital, and much better than anything that we could think of for ourselves. This mental attitude is the key to success and demonstration. It's the key behind when we say let go and let God. Because I think sometimes our own minds, our human minds, limit ourselves. But when we open to the possibilities, things come together that we never could have imagined. That definition is the sermon in and of itself, which of course I'll do sometime, but not today. So let me talk about the 3 components of manifesting again. Open-mindedness, faith in God, the realization that the will of God is for us and is always something joyous and interesting and vital and much better than anything we could think of for ourselves. Finally, number 4, blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled. Well, righteousness, here we go again, is another great key word from the Bible, one of those keys that the reader must have in his possession if he's to get the true meaning back of the word. Righteousness means, in the Bible, not merely right or ethical conduct, but right thinking on all subjects in every department of life. As we study the Sermon on the Mount, we find that every clause in it is reiterating the great truth that outside things are but the expression or outpicturing of our inner thoughts and beliefs, that we have dominion or power over our thoughts and what we shall think, and thus, indirectly, we make or mar our lives by the way in which we do think. Jesus will constantly tell us that in these discourses, that we have no direct power over outer things, because outer things are the effects. They're just the consequences. We have to return back to cause, which is in our own mind. The great law of the universe is just this: that which you think in your mind, you will produce in your experience. As within, so without. Bill Hornaday used to say, can you afford, and I used to listen to Bill Hornaday every morning, Rich and I did, in Whittier. He had a radio show. And he would say, can you afford the consequences of your thinking? Can you afford the consequences of your thinking? You cannot think one thing and produce another. It just doesn't work. If you want to bring into your circumstances harmony and happiness, you must first control your thoughts for harmony and happiness, and then the outer things will follow. It's like believing is seeing. Seeing isn't believing, because if you're looking out there and judging on life on what you see out there, it's backwards. You got to look in here. If you want health, you must first think health. And remember, thinking health does not merely mean thinking a healthy body, important as that is, but it also includes thinking peace and contentment and goodwill for all. You can't say, I want health, but not that person over there, just me. No, we're all one. What we think for someone else, we are thinking for ourselves. Because, destructive emotion, that is not healthy for the body. If you want spiritual unfoldment and growth in the knowledge of God, you must think spiritual thought. You must think God thoughts. And give your attention, which is your life, to God rather than to limitation. If you want to be loved, you must first think thoughts of love and goodwill. If you want material prosperity, you must first think prosperity thoughts, and then make a habit of doing so. For the thing that keeps most people poor is the sheer habit of poverty thinking. We have heard so many stories about people who live in apartments, little dumpy apartments, and eat cat food, and when they pass away, they find millions of dollars stuck in their mattress. What? It's a mental attitude. It's a mental attitude. When we awaken to the knowledge of these great truths, then we will naturally begin to apply them in our lives, realizing at last the vital importance of righteousness or the right thinking of harmonious thoughts. We begin immediately to try to put our own house in order. The principle involved is perfectly simple, but unfortunately, the doing of it can sometimes not be very easy. I know it sounds simple, right? Change your thinking, change your life. But then those thoughts went by, and you go, wait, I didn't want that thought. Well, why is this difficult for us? And the answer really is because it becomes a habit. It becomes a habit. And habits of thinking can be the most subtle in character and the most difficult to break. They happen so fast. They flow across the state of consciousness in an unbroken stream, and so rapidly that only unceasing vigilance can deal with them. That's where meditation comes in. That's where classes come in. That's where, reading your creative thought magazines and Science of Mind magazines and dedicating a time to start your day each day and know that is what you want to experience in your life, and claiming it for yourself. And so we might become discouraged with ourselves and indulge in a great deal of self-condemnation because we do not very speedily change our whole current of thought overnight. We just can't do it. It is a process. And because we can't change it our entire lives, we really bring that self-condemnation upon ourselves. And it can become a downward spiral. It's like, wow, look what I created. I made this happen. And then it's self-condemnation, and it doesn't serve us. So we want to break that vicious circle. And if you're not progressing as fast as you wish to, then remember this: to be still, more careful to hold only harmonious thoughts. Do not dwell upon your mistakes or upon the slowness of your progress, but claim the presence of God within you, all the more in the presence of discouraging circumstances. Remember the saying, I demand to see the good in this, regardless of what it is. Regardless of what it is, I demand to see the good. And that was Mary Baker Eddy, This too is good. This too is God. This too is good. And I demand to see the good in this, whatever you're faced with. Claim wisdom. Claim power or prosperity in prayer. Have a mental stock-taking or review of your life and see if you are not still thinking unrighteously in some section or other of your mind. In this Beatitude, Jesus tells us not to be discouraged because we do not overcome everything at once, because our progress seems to be slow. If we are not making any progress at all, then it is up to us to find out why, by examining our lives and by praying for wisdom and guidance. But if things are moving, if things are improving, although not very quickly, it may be, we have no need to be discouraged. We need only to work on steadily, and provided that we are truly wholehearted in our efforts, provided that we are really hungering and thirsting for righteousness, then at last we shall surely be filled. It could not happen that a wholehearted search for truth and righteousness, if persevered in, should not be crowned with success. Ernest Holmes tells us, if daily we are realizing more of the truth and applying it in our actions, then we are on the right path. So there you have the first 4 of the 8 Beatitudes. And we'll get to the next 4 next week. So I'll just go over them real quick. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Meaning heavenly bliss is invoked upon us when we set aside preconceived notions that prevent us from connecting with our source. Number 2, blessed are they that mourn, for they shall be comforted. Inviting us to allow our troubles to take us to a place where we can more deeply experience the presence of God. Number 3, blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit the earth, teaching us how to be manifestors in this world by being open-minded, having faith in God, and knowing that the will of God for us is always something joyous and interesting and vital and much better than any of us could think of for ourselves. And finally, number 4, blessed are they that hunger and thirst after righteousness, for they shall be filled, meaning those who stick to the idea of right thinking, one thought at a time, shall have lives transformed. Jesus is telling us that life is an inside job. And I forgot my clicker because this was on a church sign. I thought this was great. There we go. It is the journey of awakening of our soul that not only brings us to a place of peace and happiness, but that also enables us to create and manifest our external reality. When we realize this, when we realize that life is an inside job, we are blessed, truly blessed. And so it is.